ownership runs everything. Bob Kraft's a good owner. The Patriots are good. I'll give you an example. Mark Workentine is a guy I've known for a long. I haven't seen Mark in years. I think he's a front office exec now with the Knicks. He used to be in Portland. When I covered Jerry Tarkanian at UNLV, his top assistant was Tim Gergerich. His number 2 assistant was Mark Workentine. And as a young reporter, I befriended Mark Workentine. And Mark used to tell me something. He said, there's such a game that you play with the owner in the NBA. He says that owners don't watch international basketball. So he says if you get to like a pick in the NBA draft and it's down to an international guy who you like slightly more than a domestic kid, he goes, you're better off if you want to save your job to draft the college basketball player. And I said, why? And he said, because the owners never watch the international player. And if you pick him and he doesn't work, he's going to fire you. But owners are busy people, right? Multiple businesses. They don't watch college basketball until March Madness. So they'll watch the Elite Eight, the Sweet 16, the Final Four, right? The owner will. And he'll tell his wife or his mistress or both, oh, I know college basketball. And they'll watch Jimmer Fredette. Or they'll watch Kemba Walker. And they'll watch a kid dominate for 3 or 4 games. And in college basketball, you get these kids that have these great 4 or 5 games. And he said, if you ever get down to drafting that guy or the international guy, he goes, you're better off drafting the domestic player because the owner thinks he knows college basketball. And I'll give you a great example. The DeMarcus Cousins situation. Vlade had a better deal with the Lakers, but Vlade couldn't make that deal because the owner of the Kings, according to a front office source, I'm reading this from ESPN.com, that the owner of the Sacramento Kings thinks Buddy Hield, who was great in the tournament, is the next Steph Curry. Now think about this, which is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. So here's the owner of the Kings. His GM got more picks from the Lakers because Vlade came out and said 2 days ago I had a better deal. Well, we find out now it was the Lakers and the Pelicans. So when Vlade says I had a better deal with another team, he's inferring the Lakers actually gave him more. But the owner of Sacramento is in love with Buddy Hield. And he thinks that Buddy Hield is the next Steph Curry. Here's how ridiculous this is. Buddy Hield stayed for 4 years in college. If you're really great, you don't stay for 4 years in college. It's sort of like television. I worked in local TV for 13 years. If you're really, really good, you don't stay in Santa Barbara or Midland, Texas for 9 years. You get out, you get a job in, Kalamazoo, you get a job in Indianapolis, then you do weekends in Houston, then you get a number 1 job in Philadelphia. You move up the chain every few years, right? You don't stay in Santa Barbara for 9 years. Okay, it's the same in college basketball. If you're good, you get out. Buddy Hield stayed for 4 years. His 4th year in college basketball against college basketball players, he averaged 2 assists. He's a guard. He averaged more turnovers than assists his final year. Steph Curry, who played at Davidson, far less talent working at Davidson than Oklahoma, right? Oklahoma draft, they recruit really good players. So Buddy Hield had better teammates, some borderline pros at Oklahoma, 2 assists as a guard. Steph Curry averaged 3 times that many assists as a junior, and they were Davidson players. So you'd presume they're not as talented as Oklahoma players. Capiche? What I'm saying here is Steph Curry's maybe the best ball handler in the league. He's one of the best distributors in the league, in the NBA. He is a great teammate. He can shoot, he can score, he can distribute, he can ball handle. Buddy Hield can't pass. After 4 years of college, he couldn't pass. He's an average ball handler. But my point is, the owner of the Kings wouldn't let Vlade pull the trigger on the Laker deal because he thinks Buddy Hield, who was big in the tournaments, better than Steph Curry. This is what you deal with in professional sports. And as Mark Workentine told me, this was like 20 years ago, he said, be very careful about owners in the NBA. That's why be very careful about drafting the better international player. They watch March Madness, fall in love with some shooting guard, and if you don't take him and the international guy busts, you get fired. If the Final Four guy busts, you can say, well, we both liked him. You liked him. I like him. You can't fire me for that. And the owner's like, yeah, I guess I did like him too. But the Kings owner's like, oh, Buddy Hield, he's the next Steph Curry. He will never be close to Steph Curry.